Hello, hello, and welcome to Season 3 of Death Café with me, your Latinx death doula and bruja, Pastel Supernova. This is where we hold heart-led conversations about death, dying, and loss. I'll be sharing personal journeys and also speaking with insightful minds about everything to do with the inevitable. For episode 16, you get to meet Andee Kinzee, the whimsical and charismatic creator of Kicking the Bucket podcast, a thought-provoking and conversation-starting fiction pod about aging and end-of-life autonomy. This binge-worthy comedy is great, it's sweet, and has a fantastic call to action. Hello.
Hello.
I'm so happy to meet you.
Thank you. I'm happy to meet you too, Pastel.
Oh, what a blessing. I would love for you to tell everyone who you are and what you do.
Sure, absolutely. My name is Andee, like Gandhi, but without the G, Kinsey. And I am a multidisciplinary artist. I work in theater, film, and now audio storytelling. I'm also a teaching artist. I work with youth and Shakespeare. So I introduce young people to Shakespeare through performance and play. Um, I tend to create projects that are super collaborative. They have a community bent to it, and they're usually a little bit messy or atypical or very niche in the themes or topics that are covered. For example, I made a short film about mother-daughter relationships and the cycle of body insecurity. I also co-curated a multimedia exhibit or festival about perimenopause and menopause. I did a wild production where I worked with youth around the world. We did an global a global production of Hamlet, where each different group added on to the epic saga. They added another scene to it. And now I have this audio story that I'm working on that's about caregiving and family and two older adults who are plotting their deaths, only they're not very good at it.
No. And this wonderful story is called Kicking the Bucket.
Yes, kicking the bucket. That actually has an interesting backstory to it. It was originally called Dolores and Howard Kicking the Bucket. No, sorry, Dolores and Howard Kick the Bucket is what it was originally called. And then during table reads, we were getting feedback on the title of Kick the Bucket. And there was some resistance to it because it seemed so final and not as fun. So one suggestion was, what about kicking? Because that makes it in the act of kicking the bucket. And so that one seemed to work with everybody. So it became kicking instead of kick.
In terms of how the story evolves, it makes sense because they are continuously
Yes.
kicking the bucket, trying
Yes.
so hard.
Yeah. Yes. Mhm.
You have a lot of pull from your lived experience to put into this story. And listeners, please go listen. It's so captivating, and the characters are really, really sweet and funny, but also uh, they're dealing with some real stuff. They're, and so while I was listening to the story, one of the things that I kept going back to is, oh no, you lived this. I'm already getting shaky, like thinking about these things. So, how were you able to, or was it easy to turn it into a comedy and pull these sweet moments out of what I know is must be true pain?
I, like I mentioned earlier, I work with youth and Shakespeare. So in that process, I've adapted over like 24 scripts for the performances. which are a mix of the modern narration and the original verse. And so I like to joke that Shakespeare was my writing teacher, and he taught me that you can't have tragedy without comedy. So the stories that um, I'm drawn to the most are the ones where I am laughing and crying at the same time.
Yes.
Because to me that in the when you're in the deep well of the pain, it to have that laughter kind of gives you that little spark of hope, of joy, of life can still go on. Like it gives you that feeling that yes, this pain is happening now, but it can also be finite. Like you can come out of it. So I gravitate towards those kinds of stories. And my immediate family, we're the awkward ones. My husband and my kids and I are the ones who laugh in the face of death or pain. So we find that it's much easier to bring the laughter in when things are very hard. So it's kind of a natural transition. The story itself definitely. It, I want to say that I wrote it because I couldn't have those end of life conversations with my parents. Um, but in all honesty, it was actually before I knew how hard it was to have those end of life conversations. It was before I knew about the giant system that exists that makes it so challenging and complicated to die for death and dying in this country. So I didn't even know about this whole system that existed. And my mom was always talking about that end of life autonomy because she shares a story that I'm sure is familiar to many people who have had dementia or Alzheimer's in their family when she and my mom or no, she and my grandmother were at a grocery store one day. This was when my grandmother was still alive. They were checking out, and the checkout person said to my grandmother, "Oh, is this your daughter?" And she looked right at my mom. And my grandmother turned and looked at my mom and said, "Well, she's somebody's daughter, but not mine." And so this is familiar, of course, to many people who have to experience the loss of memory or the cognitive impairment that happens as our loved ones age. But it hurts, right? It hurts every single one of us every time you lose that connection with your loved one. So my mom didn't take it personally. We can't take it personally, but she knew as my grandmother deteriorated that her mom would never have wanted to end up like that. And she knew that my mom, did not want to either. So she spent many years telling us, when I don't recognize you, I don't want to be around anymore. And like talking about, I'm going to do the Hemlock Society, or I'm going to do this, or like all these ideas of how she wants to have some ownership or some control over that period of her life when she reaches
Mhm.
that point. Um, so that kind of happened, we're thinking about all these things. The pandemic happened, and we were hearing things like from our Texas lieutenant governor saying things like, oh, the grandparents should or would sacrifice themselves for the economy, and so we were hearing things like that. We were separate from our aging parents, so
Mhm.
everyone was separate from each other. Shortly after all of this, Texas was dealing with bodily autonomy in terms of women and their right to bodily autonomy. So kind of the crux of the story, I think the heart that came to it was that feeling of autonomy and feeling so helpless at a time when we felt like we couldn't do anything. And the question of really at the end of life, we really have no control over ourselves then either. So I think that was kind of at the heart of it. Um, and now that I've said all of this, I'm like, did I actually answer the question about how hard it was to write this?
We're
I
here
think,
now.
yeah. Well, so, also in addition, like this, the pandemic was like a horrible time, but then there were moments of special times. So I was writing this story and I had my family, my husband and my son and my daughter were right there. And so we would read scenes together at night and they would say, "Hey, what about this? What about that?" So it became, in a wonderful way, this kind of intergenerational process where, I could pull in perspectives of the kids with their older adults, the older adults themselves, as I was thinking about our kids and what we would want to do. Um, it involved a lot of tears, right? A lot of like deep things that you go through. Every time I kind of went too deep, I had the the luxury, the beauty, the welcome respite also from my family members going, "Oh, ha ha ha," what
Yeah.
about this? They would help kind of pull me back from that abyss and help insert some of that humor when I couldn't quite find it. So, um, I said I like to work collaboratively. I use whoever's around me, like, let's bounce these ideas off of each other. And so it was hard, but it was also healing. Um, I should say that that's in coming to terms with my feelings around death and dying. When it comes to talking to your loved one about their end of life plans, it's very different. We're still working on that.
I was gonna ask, while you guys were playing with the scenarios and letting the stories build, did it evolve to like real choices and decisions that you would like to make? Did you put a pin in it, or were you guys just like, blah, 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 let's talk about the show again?
It didn't necessarily put a pin in it. It was more that we used the story as an excuse not to have to go deeper for ourselves.
Right.
So we used Dolores and Howard and talked, and that's kind of the beauty of it, I think, because when you have fiction, you can judge the characters more than you might judge a real person, right? You can say, "Oh, what they're doing is kind of crazy," or, "Oh, what they're doing is a really good idea." You can talk about them and use them as placeholders for yourself, right?
Yeah.
So we we were able to get more comfortable with the idea around them. We didn't take that next step of saying, "Okay, now that we've discussed it through them, what would we do, in this situation? How do we want our end of life to look? What do we value?" We didn't make that next step, but we will by the end
Yeah.
of the year. Our plan is we're going to have that conversation by the end of the year. We've said it. So
Wonderful. So just not yet.
not yet. Yeah.
But that's good because they're not questions you can pose and answer right away. I mean, perhaps a few people can, but overall, like within a family, for
Yeah.
everybody to really harmonize with all everyone's choices, it does take some time to sit and simmer and either make acceptance or make sense or disagree, but still respect.
Do you feel like that's one of the challenges when trying to get people to have these conversations is that we feel like it should be okay. I go through my checklist, decisions made. Do we do we not spend enough time saying, no, this is an ongoing conversation? It should start when your kids turn 18. We should be doing this every year, you know? Should
Yeah.
we be spending more of time pushing that idea forward?
Well, I'm a big believer that it should start right away, right from go. As children, uh, I had a mother who I had already lost my grandparents. So she really, and as we got older, she used different words, but she always let us know, like, one day I'm not going to be here. And it would even pop up when my brother and I would fight. And she's like, you have to start learning how to work together because
Together.
one day I'm not going to
Yeah,
be here.
together.
And,
Yeah.
sometimes it was like with like Catholic guilt.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah.
lied, it's like, well, what if I
Yeah.
died? And you're like, and other times it was no real talk, let's talk about
Yeah.
this. So it was always there, but I think not enough people talk about what they want with each other, because one thing is to talk about the possibility and the reality of death, but it's a possibility for many people. They don't want to know that it's going to
Mhm.
happen. They
Mhm.
can't sit with it for much longer than that one sentence. uh, but also I have met a lot of people who have choices they know their families are not going to agree with. And that's where the conversation stops. So even if they can talk about death, they cannot talk about what they want after. Like, do you get cremated? Do you get buried? Do you want something completely different? There's especially religious households or traditional households. If there's somebody who decides they want to do something completely different, they can't fathom the rejection. So they keep these choices secret, but then once they pass, as a survivor and witnessing a couple of these situations, the family can go ahead and do whatever they want anyway.
Yeah.
They can overstep the wishes. And if there had been some conversation, and sometimes there's resentment about, well, that's crazy. We're not doing that. And then, you know, go somewhere else. So if there is conversation, then it won't be, well, I'm right and you're wrong, and I'm still going to do this. And, you know, uh, that will create a point of contention, like for conversations to come. It'll be, well, I can't believe that person wanted us to do this. No, no, no. We buried them here. And
Mhm.
um, it comes from a place of love,
Yeah.
because it's
Yeah.
it's not about anything other than we really think this is the best choice, but the best choice is actually what the person wants. It's them. It's
Yeah.
tough to listen to. So yes, uh, getting used to awkward conversations first, which is why I think this story is great, because it's awkward. And there are moments where, Dolores and Howard are getting interrupted to the point where I was screaming. I was
Yes.
just like, shut up, just listen. But also
Yeah.
you can tell that Dolores and Howard are also not only are they getting interrupted, but it's something hard for them to say. So sometimes they hesitate. And if they take too long, then their loved ones just kind of step over it, thinking that they're just stumbling over random words
Yeah.
instead of, oh, you have, what is it? Tell me what's on your, this is strong. It's taking time to come up. They're
Yeah.
just like, oh, you're a senior. So don't worry. You don't have to say, let me hear you, water. And
Yeah.
step over. And I'm like,
Yeah. 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 I didn't, you write the story, you're writing the story from the heart of the character, and you may not totally realize the overall effect that it's having um, in the process of writing it.
yeah,
So, as part of these the story. We were lucky enough to make this story because of the city of Austin. So the city of Austin uses the hotel tax to support the artists, and so we got a grant,
Mm.
the Elevate grant from the city of Austin Economic Department, and and so as part of the grant requirement, you need to have a live event. And I was trying to figure out how a podcast, an audio story could have, it's supposed to be listened to by yourself, could have a live event. So I came up with this idea that's very old fashioned, which is like a listening club, like the old-fashioned
Ooh.
radio drama where people used to sit around the radio and the show came out and they'd listen to it. So we created these listening clubs, and the grant helped with the listening clubs. We partnered with Austin Public Library. Jennifer there put us in touch with all of the other branches. And the production itself, we had our producer, Dana Wing Lau, but we also had Chloe Carcamo, who was our podcast club or our listening club producer,
Mm.
and Kiara McCarty was our marketing guru. So the team pulled together this event that happened with the release of each episode at the library. We'd listen to the episode and then we'd have a discussion around it with a guided discussion with an expert facilitator that the team had pulled these facilitators together. And so it was getting to hear feedback from listeners in the real life in this shared space where we could bring up these topics that were uncomfortable, but using the fiction story to separate it
Yeah.
from ourselves, right? To give that little space in between. And the biggest thing through all of it was the lack of communication, which is a huge reflection of the issue, right? Is that we're so bad at communicating this particular topic and subject, whether it's because our brains are hardwired not to think about our death and dying, because we don't want to confront the loss of the person, whatever it is, we in real life are not communicating. So in that the story, that reflection of the lack of communication, which is happening to all of us,
Mhm.
became really, really evident as everyone was listening. So to the story. I was like, but Dolores is trying to communicate. No, this is society not listening to. It's not her kids, it's society. Like we just don't want to listen to our older adults. So it's been very interesting, the that aspect. And can this story become a vehicle to help us communicate? Could it be used as a tool? Only time will tell.
I think it already has begun between the listening club and us talking and you spreading the word. It's happening. It's You're doing it. Because there are a lot of, yeah, angles you can take the side of each character. And I mean, I always take it back to my world. So it helps me see a different person's point of view. If Howard is like this other person in my life, I can,
Yeah.
okay, what would he do? Oh, all right, and go. But also it is separate, but it's still planting the seeds, I
Mm-hmm.
think, for
Mm-hmm.
everyone. So I
Yeah.
have one more question, and then we're going to take a quick break. But
Okay.
what was the age group of your listening clubs?
Okay. The age group of the listening club leaned more towards people who were later in life in their 60s and 70s. But we did have people as young as their 20s and as old as 90, 91, 92. So you had people who kind of ran the gamut. It mostly consisted of people who were closer to having to think about these topics, closer in age to having to think about the topics, um, but not in the middle of it, right? So in the middle of it, it could be too hard or challenging to listen to
Mhm.
the story because you're in the middle of it. So they weren't necessarily in the middle of it. And then there are some younger people who perhaps their adults were aging more rapidly, or they were kind of pushed into the caregiving role sooner. Um, and then because my son is still in town, so he would come and bring a friend. So so it could get some younger, points of view as well. So
Let's
yeah.
talk about the magic that you have created with your wonderful team. I can see kicking the bucket turning into an animation. Uh, it's just so easy, but that's because of the alchemy that
Hmm.
was created.
Hmm.
So please tell us about your team and the actors and everyone who
Yeah.
turned it into a film for me in my forehead.
So, originally it started as a screenplay, which is really, really interesting. And I think that that kind of contributes to the visual imagery behind it. I In the process of how it kind of evolved and it changed over the years, I started listening to fiction podcasts.
Mhm.
And so I became really, really fascinated by the intimacy of stories in your ears. It's a new medium. It's different from live theater. It's different from film. It's its own medium, not better, just different. And I feel like you are so connected to the story when it's in your ears. You feel like you're part of it in a different way than you would with theater or film. And so I was really attracted to this idea of audio bringing the intimacy needed around this subject. So you could feel it in a more visceral way as if you were going through it. And I also knew all along that because of my theater and film background,
Mhm.
I was like the sound design, the soundscape has to be a huge part of it because I want it to be like a movie for your ears or a TV series for your ears. Now, that said, this whole fiction audio world and this immersive sound design, it's new. We don't even have terms that we agree on in the industry or the field. So immersive, and people don't even know what you mean when you say immersive design, sound design. But what I'm talking about is this soundscape. So you hear the steps. You hear the like doors opening and shutting. You're hearing the action and the activity around the dialogue and the speaking that's happening, which helps you imagine what's going on.
Mhm.
And it becomes more alive in your mind because then you, the audience, become a collaborator in the story. And we say in film that a story has three lives. First, it's when it's written, that's the one life of the story. Then it evolves during production, and then it evolves during post-production. So you kind of have three lives. I feel the same way with this audio drama. Like it started one way and then it evolved during production because of time or costs, things, limitations. And now it evolved even more in a way that I feel so lucky that you make a film, it goes out there and you hardly ever hear about it. But we're bringing people together to have these conversations. And I feel like the listener the audience is becoming part of the process. So the audience is what's key to that third life of the story, because
Mhm.
it's becoming this whole story, new story for each individual person listening to it. Um, so not everybody who's doing fiction sound design for the fiction podcasts works with this immersive kind of style. So I had to
Yeah.
search all over the place to find a team that could do this. And I was so lucky to come across Hemlock Creek Productions with Marissa Ewing and Melissa Pons. And they worked together to help design this soundscape, which was a really fun process because for the sound design, I was giving visual references, or, the sound designer is not even in this country. And so I was having to send, oh, like this is what it sounds like in Austin. Like we have grackles and um,
Right.
we have the cicadas and there are all these sounds that you don't realize color your world, right?
Mhm.
And when I started thinking about it and like going, well, what actually identifies this place? There are specific sounds for each place that you're in that help identify it, which brings like that next sensory level, to the
Yeah.
surface. Sometimes in the movies, you hear it, but you may know that something's wrong, but you're distracted by the visual elements. So you may not really notice or care. But in the soundscape, we had to be very, very specific with the
Mhm.
sounds to put us in the different places. And so they were incredible. They've done it before. They're going to keep on doing it, designing these immersive soundscapes. In terms of the actors, we were lucky enough to do these table reads in the community. I, with Austin and a retirement community, like I was able to kind of join with these different forces to have these table reads. And a couple of the actors who were there for the table reads were then available for some in studio recording here in Austin afterwards. So I think I mentioned them earlier. Mimi Strum
Mhm.
brought Dolores to life, and Richard Gartner brought Howard to life. So we had the advantage, which really speaks to my theater background of rehearsals, right?
Yeah.
I love doing rehearsals. So we
Mhm.
had the advantage of having worked on the story through the table read and kind of, made some changes based on that. So they were really immersed
Yeah.
in these characters. Like they really, really understood Dolores and Howard and were part of the evolution. So they were able to bring this additional layer that you don't always have. We did record in studio, so we had them in the same room. I think that adds another layer of interaction. It's harder in terms of editing,
Yeah.
but it gives you like real like liveliness that you might miss out on if people are recording separately. We did have some of the minor characters recorded separately in their own sound booths around the country. So we have that as well. And that works too because oops, I just hit that. Sound artists or voiceover artists are very skilled at giving you different emotional beats with their line delivery. So they give you multiple options to use for
Mhm.
whatever emotion you're trying to hit in the scene. And part of the actors were people who we knew within the community, within our artistic world. And some of them were people who came to us new for the project. So it was a beautiful combination of all these different forces bringing everybody together to record it. And yeah, it's very thrilling to hear your words come to life.
Yeah.
in the way that you didn't quite imagine them. So some of the things I would never have thought of that when I was imagining the moment or the scene. And it made it so much better because you're adding on so many perspectives and so many different layers that it
Mhm.
becomes a much grander, richer story than I could have just put out by myself.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. In the dance world, when we rehearse, like theater, a bazillion hours, you're there like day and night and for like what feels like a whisper of a moment. And you're like, what? It's over. Uh, the choreographer and the director are always this, that, the other. Again, edits, changes. But the moment we were in the wings, choreographers always tell us the same thing. Okay, now forget everything I said. Go. And
Yeah.
that life, you get to really just jump in and dare to be so present that uh yeah, it transforms in a different way. And then, choreographers, hopefully they love it. They love what you do. But there's that. So that third life is actually like many, there are many elements going in to
Mhm.
create this part. And then it lands on the audience and there's a whole other that it just becomes like a multiverse of interpretations.
And that is the reason why I think AI is not going to take over.
No. Yeah.
Because
Same.
we know when that's missing. You
Yeah.
can be like this person is very, very skilled, but if the dancer, the musician, the whomever is missing that spark of life, you're like, okay, well, it was really skilled,
You can do the
but it
trick.
doesn't move you, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's the magic of storytelling. And there's the thing I love to tell people, because if I ask, audience members, especially when I did contemporary dance and it got really abstract,
Yeah.
some people would
Yeah,
be
yeah,
like,
yeah.
I don't know dance. I'm like, well, did if it didn't touch you, it didn't touch you. If it touched you, there it is. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's all there
Yeah.
is. But
Oh, I just saw just the other week like an incredible contemporary modern dancer. I was just like, whoa, like what this person did was yeah, the body, oh yeah, I know what you mean. Like it's not necessarily that you're watching the technical skill, which is brilliant. It's the that emotion, that thing that comes through the person as they're reaching one hand, one single hand up or around.
yeah.
It, I think dance can move me to tears too.
Art must always
Art,
be protected.
music,
Let's
all of
protect the
it.
arts, everyone. Art is actually how I help most of my death doula patients, is through art. We always end up with art. So protect the
Yeah.
arts, folks.
Yeah. So is it typically um like a like an artistic 2D, 3D medium? Or are you using dance and music and stories? What all do you use in your practice?
I tend to be with bedbound people,
Hmm.
so I will test their limiting beliefs on dance. I love to use dance.
Yes.
Yep. So
Yeah.
what do you mean dance? Well, what can you move? What do we have?
Mhm.
Even if it's a matter of breathing
Right.
differently, like we start to move in and really
Mm.
embody just something else, whatever it is. Sometimes I don't even ask them. I'll give them some prompts, but they usually starts because when I'm around, I move a lot when I'm talking, and they might be like lying back, resting, and eventually they always end up watching me, and then they'll start to copy me, and we'll do something, and it can be very gentle. Like I do a lot of like hand gestures and
Yeah.
fingers, and then well, it turns into like a little contact improv where we just do, and then the touch is just so healing of just being together and something like that. Also, drawing, painting, and the
Mhm.
storytelling is that one doesn't even have to be prompted. That's My special skill is listening, so I just sit there and then it comes flowing, which is
That's so
beautiful.
beautiful.
I listened to the whole story in one sitting.
Oh, you did?
I did.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like, more, give me
Yeah.
more. So,
We that's been an interesting thing too, because with the fiction podcast being, part of this intimacy, I picked a very niche genre. So when you hear about fiction, I actually did a Sundance workshop on audio storytelling or fellowship thing, and they were talking about the genres of podcasts. And they didn't even list drama because drama is not something that the fiction podcast world thinks that people want. So I picked a niche genre with this dramedy. I picked a niche topic with death and dying, right? And then I made it a limited series, which is also like super niche too. So only time will tell if this is a good idea. But, I've also been playing with the idea of turning it more into what in the UK they tend to call an audio drama or a multicast dramatized story. Um, and that way it becomes one long piece and you
uh,
find it in the audiobook world, as opposed to in the podcast world. So I've been playing with that idea. Like maybe it is better as a one sitting kind of thing rather than these separate things. So, or maybe we need both.
maybe I think maybe for people who are actually sitting with the topic,
Mhm.
the little snippets that each episode is a good amount of time
Yeah,
because it is, but this is my space of interest. So I was I couldn't move. Plus, the way it's produced just makes it really easy to binge.
yeah,
It
yeah.
it it flows. One thing that we haven't talked about, the last nugget I would like to offer listeners is that there is a choose your own adventure element
Mhm.
to this wonderful story, which invites us, the listeners, to consider our options on, like how we talked about before, how could we possibly deal with the end of our own lives, but like how do we even approach grief and closure and what does that mean? And you pose a very powerful choose your own adventure moment uh, that had us talking for a while before the show. And I want you to invite you to talk more on that.
Of
It's
course.
bold.
Yeah. So the choose your own ending came about because during our table reads, I wasn't sure. I had the ending that I wanted to have happen, but I wasn't sure if it was the right ending. So during these workshopped table reads, I stopped it, the story, at the end of episode 7 and said, what do you want to happen? Do you want Dolores, do you want to follow the path of Dolores and Howard and their wishes? Do you want them to talk to their kids? What do you want to happen? And it was perfectly evenly split in terms of the response of people who wanted to follow Dolores and Howard's wishes and following the like communicating, like finally communicating with their kids. And I thought, okay, if it's evenly split, I still don't have an answer. So, what if, because it's in this audio podcast format, which does not work for if I pieced it all together, so it could only be done in this medium. What if there was the option to choose your ending? And I had the producers were encouraging it too. They're like, yeah, that sounds really cool. Make it 3 options. I was like, no.
Done, done.
So then, there was this struggle of like, what is this other ending gonna be? So for those who are going to listen to it, episode 8A was the original ending. So I was like, what is this episode 8B ending going to be? How can this happen? Because, it's actually having that conversation. I was
Yeah.
like, I'm not ready to have that conversation, like I don't, because there's a fear. We were talking about how death is unique to every person. Every person has their own unique journey in life and in death as they're passing on to whatever happens next. And so to say, like, this is how it should happen was scary to me because I didn't want to trap Dolores and Howard into this moment. I didn't want to trap the audience into thinking that, this is how you do it because I didn't know how to do it. So who was I to like put it out a scenario that may or may not work? I felt very unprepared to even go there or even assume that I had any idea how to go there. But then I, realized the only way I could approach it was from the human aspect. So where my heart was, where my feelings were, not only as a daughter to my parents, but also as a mother to my kids. And so I was able to find that moment that would have happened, with in an imaginary or future circumstance in my own family and use that as the seed that sparked the ending story. They both start out exactly the same. So they diverge, about 10, 15 minutes into both of the endings. And in some ways, it was like one of the most beautiful discoveries of this whole process. Again, because there's no one size fits all. So why do we have to have this one ending? We could have, more than one, and see where that takes all of us. Um, because I'm also interested in like everybody else's endings. Like what if you're listening to this, like what's your idea of the perfect ending? How could you imagine it? Like how could you imagine that conversation? And in the act of imagining it, can that help you have the conversation? Or even when you're listening to Dolores and Howard and you hear that ending with your family members, you're like, whoa, we don't want to get to that point. Let's have a conversation now. So I'm trying to say there's no one right way. We're not going to do it perfectly. We're not going to do it the way it's supposed to happen. It's going to be messy. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to take time, but that's okay because it's not meant to be, this is how we do it. It's meant to
Yeah.
be as unique and special as each of us are.
Mm.
Mhm.
Yeah. Listeners, you must find Andee. Andee, where can we find you and all of your work?
Oh, yes. So you can go find Kicking the Bucket on the website is Improved Arts. So that's improv, ed, arts, arts.org. The slash. Is that always a forward slash or the back?
Forward
Yeah, the
slash.
slash.
This was good too.
Slash Kicking the Bucket podcast. And that will bring you to the website where you can follow the links to listen to the story. We're going to keep up information about listening clubs. I'm working with a couple of end of life doulas to design a potential facilitator's guide that could be used by communities and different educational institutions. So
Sign me
to
up.
use that to start these conversations so you can have your own listening club too. I'd also love to have this idea of a holiday challenge, whether it's a Thanksgiving challenge or on your road trip, if you're traveling, to see people, to listen to it in the car and like use it as a conversation starter. It's not always up to people's alley, but if you can feel, if you feel so inspired. But also the website will take you to all of our socials as well. We have our YouTube channel has different interviews with different experts as well. So yes, please jump on, join the conversation. It's supposed to be a community conversation. And thank you, Pastel, for making a community where we can talk about this. And also for telling us like what end of life doulas do, because I feel like I really loved your conversation with your friend who, you went through the training together
Yeah.
because we were so not sure about it. So thank you for creating a space where people can talk about it and find help and support when they need it, even if they didn't know they needed it.
Even if they didn't know they need it, we can ask for help, folks. It's totally doable. Thank you. I love talking to you. I'm so excited to see what else you prepare for us because I know it's going to be great, and I'll probably messy cry in public while I'm bitching at too, because that's what happened last time. I was laughing and then instantly cried, and then boogers came out, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm okay. I'm okay. So, thank you for that humbling moment.
Welcome. May I wish many more boogers coming out of your nose.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you, Pastel.
And there it is. Thank you for listening. To get in touch with Andee, I have put her link in the show notes. Contact me regarding grief coaching and other end of life doula services, energy work, or tarot readings. Send your stories and topics for discussions to info@pastelsupernova.com. Let me know what you want to hear about. Let me know if you've got a story to tell. I want to listen to everyone. That means people with lived experiences of deep loss. That means caregivers, other doulas. If you are also trying to get a community going to talk about this, contact me. I'm here for it. Until next time, blessings and respect.